dance!
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Fuel and Fire podcast. I'm your host, FaZe, along with my co-host, Josh. For once, it is not just the two of us and Greg. We actually have a couple guests with us, and it's an even split between the oil rig and the win column. So hopefully, I won't get ganged up on, or Josh won't get ganged on like we used to be.
Just got a few more Flames rants today.
Yeah, Josh always good for a good Flames rant.
Yeah, great time to talk about the Flames right now, for sure.
I'm just curious about how long you're actually going to be able to speak about someone like Jake Bean, because I know you were a little heavy in our pregame chat here, but I guess, yeah, we can start with the Flames. And Josh and Ann, where are you guys at in terms of the state of the union here, 2 weeks into the season?
I mean, I would say I'm enjoying it. This is kind of what I've been hoping for a long time. So as crazy as that sounds, but I think this management group or organization, ownership, wherever you want to put the blame on, kind of needed a bit of a wake up call. Like, yes, we have some good young pieces, but this is not a team that's ready to contend yet, even if you want it to be, so that you can make more playoff revenue. I think this is a team that still needs, I think they're getting there. But we still need a couple more high end pieces before you can say, okay, now we're ready to take the step into winning. So I think, yeah, a season like this, and again, it's still so early. Knowing this team, they're probably going to reel off like an 8-game win streak in November and then just be right back in the playoff mix right till the end. But yeah, I think it's definitely shooting up some red flags that maybe last year was a little bit more of a lucked out scenario versus an actual real show of what this team is.
I mean, who would have thought we'd be looking at it and saying, wow, Stuart Skinner is not even just better than Dustin Wolf right now, but absolutely crushing him in terms of the numbers.
Yeah. Wolf, yeah, like I said, there's so many issues with this team, but Wolf actually has been not great. He hasn't been the best. He hasn't, again, I think this team is just pitiful on so many different areas that you can't blame the goalie, but I think, Wolf hasn't looked the best, and I think that's why this team is where they are, because last year their offense isn't good enough to bail out even average goaltending. Their defense isn't good enough to bail out average goaltending. Like, for this team to go anywhere, they need someone playing like a top 10 goalie in the league to go anywhere and make up for all the other holes they have in their lineup. And Wolf just hasn't done that so far. And I think part of that's because their backup situation's been a nightmare. Vladar walked in the offseason. They brought in Prosvetov from Russia. He was waived before the season even starts. And now Wolf's played back-to-back to start the year. He started the year with 3 and 4 nights. He's now played 5 of 6 games already. And I think they may be asking a little bit too much of a goalie going into his sophomore season. Like, I think we all love Wolf. We know the goalie he can be, but maybe they kind of got ahead of themselves in hoping that he already was that workhorse, Igor Shesterkin, Connor Hellebuck, one of those guys who can just put the team on his back. Last year he did that, but again, he only played 60 or so games. You had a veteran in Vladar who could step in, which they don't have this year. And I think that's kind of showing already where, game 2 of the season's a back-to-back, and they don't trust the backup to put him in, and they're throwing Wolf out there again, and then just getting shelled. Yeah, so I think that's something I think they got to figure out here, because I think just for Wolf's development, it's not the best sign that you're kind of already year 2 and you're treating him like prime Mika Kiprusoff and like, okay, you good to play 75 games this year and just blow your knees out. Like, I think you got to be a little more careful with his development. As good as he was last year, he's still 24 years old. So it's still long ways to go. You just signed him to a 7-year extension. Like, let's ease him into it a bit more instead of running him into the ground too early, which I think they've done so far, and probably explains why he struggled. And then attached to that is why the team struggled so much.
Yeah, like the hot start last year. And it's like so many things went about as well as you could have hoped or could have gone, Joel Hanley career year. And then now it's a bit more back down to earth. And I agree with you that it'll be interesting to start looking at next year's draft. Have you gotten into the top 10 yet?
I've been looking at the top 10 since March of last season. No, yeah, I think I still think it's unfortunate with this team. It's too early. I don't think they're this bad. Like, I don't think they're going to finish in the bottom 5, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they finish in that 5 to 10 range, bottom 5 to 10, even if they, get back as a building year and kind of work towards the future, because they've just looked so terrible through 6 games that I don't know how much you can redeem at this point, given the talent they have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think one of the things that the worst thing a team can be in hockey is mediocre. And that's kind of where the Flames have been the last couple of years here. Uh, and to be honest, like they've never had that superstar, like first overall pick, right? The highest they've ever picked has been what, Sam Bennett in 2014, I want to say.
Yeah, 4th overalls.
So if they can acquire another one of those, hopefully top 10 picks, maybe that can be the stepping stone that the franchise needs. Obviously, this year with their developmental system, with their NCAA, AHL, and junior age players, are making a lot of strides and developments. Like we're seeing Cullen Potter play very well. His NCAA season just started, and yeah, like who would have thought this time last year that Hanzik would be on the third line for the Flames? Not a lot of people. So the fact that he is a little bit of a testament to both their scouting and their developmental system. And yeah, like it's a future outlook for the Flames for sure.
Yeah, I think they've got a good, like they have a good, really good prospect pool. There's a lot of interesting, intriguing names there. I think, like you said, they're just missing maybe that 1 or 2 more high end pieces, which is why I'm so in favor of just bottoming out at least one more year. And this year seems like the perfect one to do
Yeah.
it, given their start. Even if it's not Gavin McKenna, like, they're not really, a bottom feeder. They just exist for our pain and suffering. So like, just it would just be huge to actually get a top 10 pick this year and finally reward all that stuff we've gone through since Goudreau left in 2022. Like, I think it would go a long way to kind of reigniting the fan base because, yeah, I know fellow Flames fans here can say it's not exactly easy to tune into a Flames game these days because you know what you're getting and it's not exciting.
When I mean, going to a team that maybe is, like you said, you're ecstatic. Maybe that's a bit strong word, but yeah, like you guys, you have no expectations and you're just enjoying the ride, whether it's a good one or a bad one. Whereas Oilers fans right now, you know, we had a good first 2 games, I think, maybe even a good first 3 games, other than, Skinner screwing up that first game. And then the last 2 games have just been god awful. Like, you want to talk about a team that doesn't look like that looks mediocre or worse. That's how the Oilers looked. I don't know, Tyler, if you agree, or Greg, but like, I don't know. These last 2 games have not been good. Hopefully they can turn it up in the next 40 minutes against Detroit. But
Yeah, they just tend to be a little bit of that up and down kind of. There's no consistent trend. So even in 40 minutes, we don't know if they're going to look like the Stanley Cup champion type team or if they're going to look like the last year's Chicago Blackhawks, right? Trusting some of the more of their youth members of their team, but right now it's kind of unexpected, I guess. It's like Big Brother, you don't know what to expect.
I definitely say usage is a big problem and why there's an issue going on here, because I think you watch the first 2 games, I think they were rolling the lines fairly equally because they had McDavid and Draisaitl on one line, so that line can only play so much. And I thought they looked good. And then I think in the last 2 games, you've got them on separate lines or what have you, and you're overplaying them when you've got 3 other lines of players who.
Yeah, I think that's what I kind of go back to the Flames, what I was mentioning about. I feel like they're already out of the playoff race because you look at a team like the Oilers, or I mean, when the Blues won the Cup a few years ago, they were like dead last in like December. Oilers have had rough starts in recent years, but those teams you can look at and say, yeah, I can absolutely see a scenario where even if the Oilers were last place in the West in December, they could still make the playoffs because they have that talent. Whereas I look at the Flames team and the way they're playing, and I just don't see how they have the group to dig out of a hole that big. They don't have the McDavids, the Draisaitl's, like Bouchards, those guys who can drag teams along out of a hole. Like, I think this team is just not talented enough to do that. So they really needed to get off, not to a great 10-0 start, but at least kind of stay above water around 500 to kind of tread water for most of the year, like they did last year. Whereas even at 1-5, it's only been 6 games. That may already be a hole too big to dig out of. Whereas I think the playoffs, they're going to have to play lights out hockey for the next 5-6 months, which if you've watched any of this team's games so far, it just doesn't seem like something that's going to happen. And I mean, their leading scorer has 3 points, 4 points, the lowest leading team score in the league. Like, it just seems like even if they start to bounce back a little bit, it may already be too late, because starting 1-5 is not what you want to be when you're a team that's kind of fighting for a second wild card spot and trying to win games like 2-1, 3-2 behind a goalie, and then add on the fact that the goalie's not playing well. And yeah, you seem like you're pretty much cooked at this point. So I would be absolutely stunned if the Flames get into the playoffs. I think they'll do what they always do and probably get back into the mushy middle, and we'll be picking that like 16 to 20 range. But the playoffs seem like a distant dream at this point.
And like just like you mentioned, fighting for the second wild card spot, and that's kind of where the Oilers seem to be looking right now, at least in terms of their current performance, right? Because of that inability to play that consistent hockey, and especially coming into the season, we talked about all their upgrades to their defense core. And guys, I don't know how you feel, but seeing highlights of Evan Bouchard absolutely isn't great when I open up my Instagram in the morning. Let me put it that way.
I mean, Bouchard is, yeah, he's not been well. He's not been playing well. I'll agree with that. It's the same thing as this. I don't think McDavid's been playing that great. Draisaitl is either having an amazing shift or not so amazing shift. And that's where it comes back to me that you need to start leaning on your depth. These guys, they're a little slow out of the gate. They kind of always are, to be honest. I'm not worried about Bouchard. He's getting the kinks out, whatever. He's shown. I think a guy who, we talked about it last time, Greg, you see how good he is in the playoffs. I don't think you can just write him off 5 games into the season. And I think the fact that the media is attacking him when they've given, Stuart Skinner and Darnell Nurse the longest leashes ever is just kind of ridiculous. It's very Edmonton. He's an offensive defenseman who doesn't hit. So, in the blue collar Edmonton, it's like he can't play hockey if he makes mistakes.
It's worse because he's tall, like I always say, if he was 5'11", like people would probably have less of a problem with how he plays, but it's like a Dougie Hamilton type of thing for the Flames faithful. It's like he's big, so people are like, oh, when's he gonna cross check someone or whatever? But that doesn't mean that he's not like a really high level contributor. You know what I mean? Like, and yes, there's gonna be mistakes.
Yeah.
I'll always remember, like, because as soon as Ekholm came, they put the pairing together, and Bouchard stock kind of took off. And that first playoff run they had together, Ekholm was always talking about, hey, Bouchard is like, he's an offensive guy. Like, to be at his best, he needs to make chances, which is going to expose him to like looking dumb. Obviously, sometimes it looks a bit worse and it looks like a bit lazy, which people can't stand, or the whiffing on passes. It's like, man, we've seen you like put up the 3rd most points in a single playoff season already, and you can't break out of your zone. But whatever, get him out of the way. It's always looking bad. He's like early in the year, it's always looking bad.
How about this proposal for both teams? We swap bad contracts. We'll send you Igor Sharangovich, so we never have to watch him play hockey again because he's terrible, and we'll take Evan Bouchard back. You guys get a elite goal scorer in Igor, and we'll take Evan Bouchard, that bum. So I think that's a fair swap for both sides.
If you throw in, Perek, maybe we can talk about it a little bit more then.
I mean, at this point, to trade Igor's contract, we probably would have to do that. So that's probably a fair proposal.
It's just apparently Philip and Howard are back in the lineup, and Savoy appears to be getting some more power play time with Lazar and Tomasek out in Detroit here.
I saw that. I'm not a fan of Tomasek coming out. I think he's been really good. I understand you can't really take. I think Kapanen's probably the one you should be taking out here at this point, but again, you have so much depth that you're taking these guys that everyone thinks should be in, and you're not playing them. Like, what's going on here? Also, I don't know, Jessica and Nan, do you guys have anything to say? As usual, Josh and I tend to be taking over.
I think you guys should take Igor's contract. Do a little charity work. It'd be great PR.
I mean, if you guys take back Nurse, actually, then we have another $4 million to figure something out.
I mean, you mentioned you weren't happy with some of the lineup decisions. How about you take Huska too? Because you can have him as well.
Yeah, that's going to help with the lineup decisions.
This might be a hot take when it comes to the Oilers. I don't think Nurse is a bad defender. I think he's just getting overpaid.
Yes.
Right? Like if he was 5 or 6 million, and he plays, how Nurse plays, I don't think as many people are complaining. But because he took what is it, like 9.5? Like, that's where a lot of the critique comes from, right? Because overall, unlike the Flames, I think the Oilers do have one of the best defense cores in the league. Between him, Bouchard, Wallman, Ekholm, and then whichever two they choose to throw out in the third pairing. I think that's going to be one of their strengths coming in to the season long haul here and even coming into the playoffs.
No, totally. I think Wallman coming back today, I think he's coming back today, is going to be a huge boon. I mean, that's a top number 3 defenseman who just adds another element to the game. Like, listen, I love Stetcher as much as anyone, but he's not a second pairing defenseman, and that's limiting you as well.
Regula is glass, apparently.
Do you want Jake Bean?
Yeah.
You know, he is a former first overall pick,
First-
former AHL All-Stars. Could be something.
His dad has CEO experience.
Who's his dad again?
I mean, you can have Danir Miramanov if you want.
Uh,
You know, honestly, you can have anyone on our team except for Wolf and Prek and Coronado. So just take your pick.
That's so generous of you, Josh, but I think we'll pass today.
Speaking of
Correct.
speaking of, he's a former Calgary Hitman, right? And the Flames actually the Flames only a hockey team within Calgary, and the Hitmen actually just acquired another Flames draft pick in Theo Stokalias. And that could be another element with him and Hertig. Another element for Flames fans to go and check out Hitman games because it's cheaper and less disappointing.
And the teams probably would beat the Flames in a 7-game series too. So seriously, for the Oilers, like a guy like Blake Coleman, do you think the Oilers would have interest in someone like that? Because I think the Flames should absolutely be looking to move him. He just doesn't. There's no point of keeping a guy like that on their team. Do you think a guy like that would be a fit on the Oilers, or probably just more kind of clog in the middle?
Yeah, like that's the thing. I think, objectively, like, yeah, he fits in on a contending team for sure. I think contract aside, because I don't think he has the best contract, obviously. But it's, again, like, who comes out at that point? Like, does he take Frederick's spot who you just committed 8 years to? No. Like, does he take out Bud Colson's spot who you just committed to and is a young guy that, fits in the team? No. Like, it's kind of that kind of thing. Again, like, the Oilers need that skill. That's why you have Savoy and Howard. So taking them out for Coleman, both from a development standpoint and just a roster making standpoint, doesn't make sense. So I'd say the Oilers are maybe the one contender who probably wouldn't need him even if you're that league min kind of thing.
Okay, so going back to what you were saying earlier, the Oilers have a wealth of those NHL quality depth players, right? And one of the things that you have to look at is, does Coleman add more than their current top 9, bottom 6? I think he's a solid player, 100%. I just think he adds another depth piece to an already kind of stacked bottom 6. I would say he's about equal with most of the other bottom 6 players on their squad.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. I mean, Phil, for instance, that's where I guess the risk comes in. If you get Coleman, you've got someone who is going to bring an X to every game. Like, he's going to do what he's going to do. You've got Phil, for instance, who could be better, but he's young, so he doesn't have the track record. So that's the only way you could look at that. And maybe, black ace in the playoffs for when you need it, especially with the new cap rules. Like, maybe that works in that sense. But yeah, it's just, we either need a really good top 6 forward, or we don't need to do anything, is my personal opinion in terms of the forward core.
I think that's like the whole Coleman discussion about how you're not even sure if he would be a fit on the team. I think that's kind of an indictment on Conroy, the fact that he hasn't traded Coleman sooner. I mean, 2 years ago, he had 30 goals and 54 points. Anyone's taking him at that point, a guy who's won 2 cups. In that short time, they've held on to him. Because as he said, we believe in the group and all that, and they want to get to the playoffs, and he's a key veteran. And already now his value is quite a bit lower than it was 2 years ago, and it's only getting lower as he gets older, to the point now where it's, if you do trade a guy like Coleman, you're probably not, you're not getting a big return. You're probably getting a draft pick or something, like a mid-round pick, maybe a second at best, depending if a team wants to pay up for his experience. But I think that's just another thing that's frustrating with the Flames, is that they've held on to a lot of these guys for longer than they probably should have, because they had that hope that they could be a playoff team. They could get back to the playoffs, and like we need Kadri, we need Coleman, when we get in the playoffs. But I mean, they haven't been back to the playoffs, and now those guys' values are all lower. So I think that's another thing that's super frustrating for me. And yeah, Jess and I'm sure you guys feel the exact same way.
100%. I think that, like, I get holding on to them to a certain extent, but at the same time, like, you have to know when that window is closing and expired, and we're beyond that. And it kind of reminds me of the Mangiapane trade. Like, I feel like that was late, even though they were like kind of on the fence about it. I don't know. But I think they just need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. I think that's like, I don't think Conroy's done a terrible job. I think he's made a lot of good decisions, but I think the main thing is, yeah, he seems to be more of a reactive guy versus a proactive. Like he doesn't go out there and make changes unless he has to. He still hasn't really traded anyone that either wasn't on an expiring deal, didn't ask to be traded, or wasn't going to resign. Like he still hasn't. The only guy would be Jacob Pelche, who cleared waivers earlier in the year. So he still hasn't made a move trading a guy like Kadri or Coleman, who may not be on an expiring deal or wanting out, but trading them makes sense and is a good, proactive move for the Flames. He still hasn't done something like that, and I mean, he still hasn't traded Anderson. Like, so I think until I see some more of that like proactive action from Conrad, I just struggle to see him building a contender. I know it's still early; he's only been around a couple of years, but just a lot of like reactive moves he's made. Whereas I think, like you said, there's times that at some point here you need to realize that you're not a playoff team, and you just kind of gotta admit that, and then make the proper moves to get better for the future. And that's again why I say that I'm ecstatic about this start, because I hope that will kind of make Conroy realize, and maybe he always has, and he just hasn't had the ability to do that because of ownership. But maybe this will push them in that direction to say, yeah, we're not a good team. Let's look to trade Kadri, Coleman, Anderson, and let's actually build towards the future, because it's not going to work with this current group as constructed.
And that's just it. Like, how much of it is ownership compared to Conroy, right? Like, I guess we won't ever really know, but you got to think that at some point, like, ownership is probably hanging on to that extra round of playoff revenue, and thus preventing him from moving guys like Anderson or Coleman or Kadri or any of them, because in ownership's mind, they never want to go through a rebuild. They want to keep that profit and revenue as much as they can. So if there's a chance, even if it's not in the like long-term vision of the Flames, if there's a chance they could make playoffs, they're going to hold on to that, right? So I think as much as fans want to blame Conroy, it's probably not all Conroy's fault, because business interests and all that other hockey stuff that a lot of fans don't necessarily consider, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think, Josh, you mentioned the Blackhawks earlier, and I think maybe Conroy's maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I think you might be cognizant of that issue as well. The Blackhawks get Connor Bedard, and you look at them and like they look like they don't look like they're ever going to be a good team again. They've got some picks, sure, but like you look at San Jose, the way Mike Greer, has done San Jose is now San Jose, I think in 2 years can easily be not just a playoff team, but like top 3 in the Pacific. Maybe that's again. So maybe Conroy's looking at it and being like, yeah, I can get rid of Kadri, I can get rid of Coleman. A, I'm maybe not going to get the value for them. And B, then if we get McKenna next year, he's going to be the only player we have along with Parekh. It's not exactly a model for success, as Oilers fans know as well. So
Yeah,
maybe I'm giving too much credit, but
yeah, I think like Tyler said, ownership 100%. At the end of the day, that's really where it all stems from. Like it all comes down from there. As Flames fans on this call know, that's just how they run the organization. If there's even the slightest chance and they can get in the playoffs, they will make that their goal. And I think after 23-24, when they bottomed out, they got Parekh. I mean, we had Eric Francis out here declaring a rebuild, which like that does not happen. So the fact he was doing that, I think they were prepared to blow this thing up or at least rebuild. And then last season happened. Wolf, does what he did. They missed the playoffs by a tiebreaker, and I think that was the worst thing that could happen, because it just completely reversed their thinking to say, now, never mind. We're look at how close we just came to the playoffs. Like we don't have to blow it up. We can make the playoffs. And I think that kind of just clouded their minds again, and now they have that playoff goal in mind, and that's why this season they this offseason, they didn't really trade anyone, and they came into this year thinking they're playoff teams. Again, I hope that this start kind of makes them realize maybe they're not a playoff team. And, I'm not saying, you don't have to go Blackhawks with it, but at least trade some of these veterans while you still can, instead of waiting 2 years when Kadri's, 36, and now you're getting like pennies for him on the dollar. Whereas I think, he had a career high in goals last year. You could probably still get a really decent return. And I mean, this year he's already looked pretty rough, so he may already be hitting that age curve, which is, not a great sign for the Flames if you do want to trade him down the line. But yeah, I think it all stems back to ownership, and that's kind of always been the case. And I think I've always said, if you took Conroy off the record behind closed doors and just asked him, do you want to rebuild if you had full control? I think he would say yes. I think it's a power struggle with ownership. Connor's been here for a while. He was the EGM. He was a player here. A lot of the guys the Flames bring in are, not to call him a puppet, but they're puppets for the ownership. They're guys who are going to follow their direction. Like same with Huska as the coach, like Conroy. Like it's just all these internal guys they bring in who kind of are just yes men for the ownership. And that's why, when we talk about when they have a coaching vacancy or GM, like, oh, bring in this high profile GM, bring in this high profile coach. Like those guys are not, like Kyle Dubas, for example, was a guy the Flames are kind of thrown around with. Kyle Dubas is not coming to the Flames to answer to Murray Edwards, right? He's coming to run the show. Like he's not coming here to be told what to do. So I think ownership is where it all stems. And I think Conroy's kind of at their will. I do think he's still, it's a tough spot. I think there's some moves he probably, but again, should have been more proactive with. But at the end of the day, I get, if we actually ever got the real truth, we would probably realize that a lot of the things he's wanted to do have been shut down by ownership because of last season and how close they came to the playoffs, that now he's being told, you're not trading Kadri, you're not trading Coleman, you're getting into the playoffs. And I mean, Rasmus Anderson, we all know he's not re-signing here. Has 8 months left on his deal and he's still here. So I think that's another proof that if they can get into the playoffs, they will. And until that is an absolute mathematical impossibility, they're not going to be looking to trade some of these veterans.
The vibe I get of the Flames currently is not, this might not be apples to apples, but like the Oilers in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Edmonton Investors Group era, where it was kind of like you could tell the team was never going to like get past the second round and then later on get past the first, because it was largely Tommy Salo and like a bunch of good defensive players, but no scoring. Look, I think somebody shared the 2001 Oilers didn't have more than a 50-point score. Then playoffs were kind of a necessity because like that was a pretty dark time ownership wise for the Oilers, nearly moving, and playoff revenue helped. I feel like it's the same with the Flames, at least for the next couple seasons, because like the owner always hasn't been like too willing to spend from what I've noticed, and he kind of runs the show himself. But it also doesn't help that they're stuck with the Saddle Dome for a couple more years. Maybe when Scotia Place opens, Murray Edwards has more money to throw around. He might be a little more willing to approve a free agent signing here and there. But for now, it's just making the playoffs is kind of his everything. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
It's a good thing that it isn't baseball and there is no salary cap, because I feel like the Flames would be even closer to the floor. And that brings up another good point. Like, wouldn't you want to rebuild the team so that it is then good in the first season of the new arena, right?
That's what makes sense to normal people, but to Flames ownership, that's talking foolishness.
Talking to a wall.
To be fair,
Yeah.
the timeline could work out really well if the Flames get. I was just looking at it because Scotia Place is supposed to open in 2027, right? If the Flames get McKenna this year, that's 2027. That's 1 year in the Saddle Dome, and then its second year is first year in a new arena. When the Oilers got McDavid, they were in their last year at Rexall, didn't make the playoffs, bottomed out again. Second year, they're in Rogers Place first season and make the playoffs. So, there's history here, and it would be a funny parallel there.
History
Yep.
does
Yeah,
tend to repeat.
Like Tyler said, like exciting hockey sells tickets. Like think of the amount of tickets and revenue the Flames made because they had a guy like Johnny Gaudreau that people wanted to watch even if the Flames suck, they're like, I'd go watch the Flames just to see Johnny Gaudreau. Like, he's an exciting player. He's a superstar. Like, there's no one on this team that you're saying, I'm going to go buy a ticket to the Flames to watch. Like, Zane Prek is that guy, but he's obviously, he's still very young. He's not playing a ton. So, like, and they talk about revenue and stuff. The Flames are already a pretty poor performance in terms of attendance. Like, their home opener, they didn't even sell out. The game after that, they had 85% capacity. Like, this team has already been so mediocre for the past 3 years. They don't play an exciting style. They don't have superstars to watch. Like, their attendance and their revenue is already down because they're just trying to force themselves into the playoffs. So like Tyler said, yeah, sure, maybe you lose some money for a couple of years if you really bottom out, but imagine the amount of tickets you're going to sell if you get a guy like Gavin McKenna or Landon Dupont or one of these guys. Like, that's what sells tickets in the long run, not just trying to squeeze in every year. Your attendance is already not great, so you don't really have much to lose by saying we're just going to be bad for a couple of years and then we're going to come back and we're going to have superstars. And again, this is Flames are a smaller market, but it is a Canadian market. The fans will show up if your team is good, even if the Flames are bad, but at least there's a direction and a future that people can look towards. People are going to show up and watch the games. I think a lot of people are just tired of the last 3 years, and I mean, dating back further from that, but of the mediocrity and just the boring style they play, like the 500 hockey they play. There's no superstars. Their leading scorer last year had like 65 points. It's hard to be in today's economy to spend that type of money to go watch a first line that has Adam Klapka and Joel Farabee on it. Like, let's just be realistic here. No slight against those guys, but if you bottom out and you get a McKenna or even anyone in the top 10, like, that's a guy who's going to sell seats. He's going to sell tickets. He's going to sell jerseys, and your revenue is going to be exponentially larger when you have those type of players, especially with a new arena opening too. Like you said, the timeline could line up perfectly. And I know when Scotia Place was officially announced, that's kind of what the organization said is their goal is to be a competitive contender, kind of like the Oilers. That's when their window started, when their new arena started. And they're kind of running out of time because you look at the team now as constructed, like, that's only 2 years away now when Scotia Place opens. And that's 2 more drafts you have to pick in the top 10. And I mean, this roster as constructed, you just re-sign Backlund, you re-sign these veteran guys to stick around past Scotia Place opening. And that timeline is getting tighter and tighter to where I don't know if they're going to be a contender in 2027. They may just still be where they are and kind of in the mushy middle. And that's not going to sell seats, especially in a new arena where the ticket prices are going to be 3 times as much as they are at the Saddle Dome.
Well, with that being said, 3 years down the line, we're going to see a lot more guys, or a lot more new Flames, I guess. So guys like Henry Muse, like Trevor Hoskins, like Potter, right? And those guys do bring a little bit more flashy, a little bit more exciting hockey. But as we've said, they're very good like secondary pieces, but they're not going to be like your first line center, your first line, or your first pairing, right? With that being said, the Flames kind of have to work with what they're given at this point. So how do you elevate a guy like Muse or a guy like Hunter Brustrowitz? I have no idea how you say his name, by the way, or Kolorensky, to then take up that 1C, one lefty mantle if you don't have those pieces, right? And that's something that the new arena is going to definitely have to. The new arena, new environment, not new management, but management and coaching staff and all that is going to have to match.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll quickly add something. So I was like a cricket and soccer fan way before becoming a hockey fan. So the terms like rebuild or even tanking was like very naive for me. Now that especially seeing yesterday's Vegas game or a couple of games ago, now I'm coming to fruition that tanking might be the best thing for the Flames, especially if you can get that one superstar. Like yesterday you saw Marstone, Jack Eichel, all that run the Flames throughout the night. So if you have like maybe that one superstar, I know we talked about Zane Perek already. We have Dustin Wolf, one forward Sander who is that one elite player. Then I'm all for it. I know it might be a long season. We are already into a long season, like Josh, you said. Yeah, I hope the ownership also comes to in terms that they know we are struggling and we need to be a contender team when Scotia Place opens. So if they can start, maybe I think they should have traded Rasmus Anderson maybe like yesterday, but it hasn't happened yet. So maybe that's the first step they should take a look at.
So what you're telling me is, just like Vegas, we should wait for Buffalo's star player to be angry and request a trade.
That's what every team that's won a Stanley Cup has done. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, just saying. So wait for Buffalo to not be able to handle things. Okay, sounds.
Here's the key statement and why Joshua was very astute in pointing it out earlier. Like anybody in the top 10 for the 2026 draft, because the key thing that the insiders have all been saying is that even beyond McKenna, beyond DuPont, 2026 is going to be one of the more stacked drafts as it's shaping up. So like you don't even have to win the draft lottery. You just get top 5 pick. You're looking at a very solid talent. If there is a year to just say, okay, we are awful this year, it is this season.
That being said, like the Flames have only picked top 5 once in their entire history. So the likelihood of
Gotta start at some point.
5 is
We're due.
Jeez.
We're due. Just we deserve this. I saw someone had tweeted out that no team in the NHL deserves McKenna more than the Flames, and maybe it's a biased take to agree with that, but I feel like I 100% agree with that. Like they've never picked in the top 3 in their organization's history. They are second worst in terms of playoff success in the lockout era, behind only Buffalo. Like you look at all the really bad teams, and you can say they've had a lot of top 5 picks, so they've been given the chance to be better. They've screwed it up after. The Flames, they haven't had top picks. They haven't had playoff success. Like I'm begging you, just give us something. Like this is getting ridiculous at this point.
Speaking of playoff success, what can I ask the Oilers guys? What do you think the Oilers have to do to find that playoff success this year?
Like, do you mean to win that extra game or two? Like,
Yeah,
to
and
those-
finally make sure that cup comes home.
I think they just need to, like, last year against Florida, the team just kind of stopped playing what got them there, I think. And, the first year they had the same thing with the first 3 games. They looked outmatched. Maybe they were awestruck by the moment. And last year they just, they won the first game and then it just kind of crumbled down. I think it's sticking to the game plan, but also like just trusting everyone outside of McDavid and Draisaitl. Because if those guys don't perform, you need your other players to step up. And they did in the first 3 rounds last year. And that's why this start this year is concerning, or at least the usage is concerning, because you've got the depth here, just like you did last year. It's a little less veteran this year, sure. But if that depth can go, like Florida, everyone talks about their top players and stuff, but it was because they could throw any line out there and they would run you. The Oilers can do that. Maybe they're not going to run you physically. They're going to skate circles around a team with the players they have. Like the only slow player in the top 12 is Adam Henrique, and at least he's a smart player. That's what you need to do. And that's the team that Knoblauch is supposed to coach. That's how he got us there in the first place in the first year. We are a offensive up-tempo team. Get the rest of the players involved in that. Like, I think that's all you need to do is just get away from the crutch. And, McDavid and Draisaitl didn't perform in the Stanley Cup Finals. Maybe, again, it's because they're worn out. I don't know. But if they don't have to worry about performing and it becomes a lot more fun for them, then, it'll be great for the team. But that's my personal opinion is you just need the depth to be given a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think part of it is just having that next man up mentality where, like, even within their system, they have probably 4, 5, 6 guys that could come up and play NHL games if they need to, right? So just being able to trust in their leadership and in their players, and that could go a long way. Sorry, I didn't even cut you off, though.
Hey, no, that's all good. No, here's the thing. Like, also, so 2 things. One, I feel like Hyman last year is the modern day Dwayne Rollison. Like, how far do we go if he doesn't get injured? And that sucks to have to say out loud, but that's a truth. The secondary thing, though, is that I actually don't mind us being mid to start this particular season because we're integrating a lot of new, younger faces and we're trying to like build them up over the course of the season. Last year and the year before were the years where it sucked to have a sucky start. because you're like, why are they doing so bad when they have so many veterans that should know how to play the game, get us to like a division title or something? This year, you've got like younger faces that are being integrated into the system. Some playing their first NHL games. Tomashik looks good, but Howard clearly is adjusting. Savoie still has a bit of ways to go. The goal over the 82 game season is to get them like used to the NHL level so that when the playoffs come, we do become the Panthers in the sense of if you make a mistake, it ends up in the back of your net for the opponents. Like that's where we've been killed is like we can play an offensive game. We make one mistake, the counterattack of the Panthers has consistently been our downfall. We need to be able to master getting that counterattack against the other team.
Is there any other topics we want to touch on, or are we all, does anyone have anything else to say?
I think I've ranted enough. So probably sick of my voice. So
Should we
I will
just,
say
should we-
I desired to keep my like appearance on this neutral, realizing there would be a lot of Flames fans. So the hat kind of unifies us both because that's classic sports.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
What a throwback.
No,
Temper
let me just say though, I
days.
think especially for Flames fans, I know like there's a lot of negativity that you can't express, but they have a brighter future. Like one thing I always recommend for people to do is just watch some NCAA hockey. They have a large portion of the prospect pool playing NCAA hockey this season. So that's where you're going to see the Ranchies. That's where you're going to see the Porters. That's where you're going to see their future, right? And it's a bright future. They just need a few more things to go to, a few more good bounces, as the sports fans would say, right? And they can be in a good spot. It's just then you get through the current cycle, and yeah, just focus on the future.
yeah, 100%. I think they've got a good starting point. It's just finishing it off now. I think what they've done so far is kind of half cooked a rebuild where they started a rebuild. Last year happens and they kind of just said, never mind, we're done rebuilding, which this start has hopefully shown them that no, you're not done rebuilding. You still have a lot of work, not a lot of work to do, but you still have a lot of pieces that you can, ship out or bring in, like in terms of more high end players. So I think maybe next time we hold this podcast, the Flames probably win 6 in a row and they're back at 500. And then we're talking about how they're going for the playoffs again. But I don't know. I just have this feeling that this might finally be the year where they really, really actually truly bottom out and really kind of look themselves in the mirror and say, I see Greg's face over there, so he's thinking the same thing maybe. But I think this might be the year where they finally kind of fall off a cliff and actually truly bottom out for the first time since like 2016 when they picked Kachuk 6th overall. So that's what I'm holding out hope for. But again, I would not be surprised if they turn it around and kind of hover right around that mushy middle once again. So just anything can happen with this team. They're so unpredictable. It's just, they're a wild card. So I think next time we get together, they could be back in the wild card mix or they could still be dead last in the league. So it's just, I just want a direction at this point, and I'm hoping that direction is to the bottom of the ocean. That'd be nice.
If things continue this way, who do you think's the first player to request a trade?
I would say Nazim Kadri, to be honest, because I guess he wants to win maybe one more time before he ages out, kind of thing. If that's the way you put him, maybe Nazim Kadri to begin with, and then maybe like Blake Coleman or So
So all the pieces we'd want to, basically.
And
I
was gonna say, like, as much flack as we have given the Flames, I think they do have a good leadership, like, contingent, right? So like Coleman, like Kadri, I don't necessarily see them requesting a trade, but if they're told, hey, we're going to ship you out to Vegas or Colorado, I don't see them turning it down.
I think Kadri is an interesting case because the way I've taken it so far, because there's a bunch of rumors with him this past summer, and a lot of it was kind of, he has no interest in leaving at this time. He's got his cup, he's got a family, he's settled down in Calgary, he's got his big contract, he's approaching his mid-30s. The way I take it, he almost seems like he doesn't really care at this point. He's already in Cancun, like he's retired. He's just collecting retirement pension and then just going to play out the rest of his years. With that said, I think if the Flames really, really sink to the bottom, he may kind of look and say, okay, maybe I wouldn't mind, going back to Toronto or going to the Avs or something for a couple of years to contend again if the Flames are really, really going to be bad. Coleman, same thing. I think, he only has a year or two left on his deal versus Kadri, who's got multi-years, but I think Coleman could be a guy who says, you know what, I wouldn't mind going to contender. If we're going for a rebuild, then we're going to sink to the bottom, then I wouldn't mind being shipped out. Anderson, we already know pretty much isn't going to re-sign here. So I think those are the big three you look at. I don't think there's anyone else really that would be a guy who would want out. The rest of the guys like Coronado, Wolf, those guys are still so young. They're here for the long term, for the future. They have many, many years ahead of them. It would be an absolute disaster if one of those guys decides they want out, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, I think if this continues and, we're getting into November, December, and the Flames are still at the bottom, I would definitely look, Kadri, Coleman, Anderson. Those are the three guys I would think that may be on the way out. Anderson, has to be traded before March, and then Kadri and Coleman could be, in the offseason too. But I think those are the three that you can kind of say, let's move these guys out, and that kind of completes the rebuild in terms of flushing out the old vets and then moving towards the future.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone came and made this, I think, probably the biggest Fuel and Fire roster we've ever had. It's nice to hear some new voices. I'm sure the listeners are also happy to not hear me, Greg, and Josh just rant as usual. I guess we can also thank technology for why Greg couldn't talk. But anyway, thanks everyone for showing up, and thanks everyone for listening. As always, check out our blogs, the Win Column and the Oil Rig. And if you want more info from us, and otherwise, we'll see you next time, wherever you get your podcasts.